We got a new Scream film, which means, yes, you guessed it, a new ranking video with all 6 Scream films being ranked. Feels a bit weird that I'm doing another one of these because I did one last year. But yeah, there you go. 1 year later, we've got a new Scream film. I'm going to go from best to worst. Normally I rank these movies, I go from worst to best. But I think it's pretty obvious, given how much I've talked about this franchise across the course of my channel, which one is going to be the best. And that is, of course, number 1, Scream, the original film. An absolute classic of the horror genre. It doesn't really put a foot wrong. It made me fall in love with horror movies for quite a long time. And it is my go-to slasher film. Brilliantly written, really nuanced in multiple ways. And just a great reflection of the horror genre in general, for newbies and oldcomers alike. And number 2 is Scream 2022. So yeah, this is last year's entry into the franchise, which was kind of a sort of a reboot, requel kind of thing that had a lot to say about the modern phenomenon of requels that used the same title as the original film. It was very entertaining. It was much better than it had any right to be. It was the 5th film in a horror slasher franchise, and we all know that 5 films into a horror slasher franchise, you don't tend to churn out things that are of good quality. But this was very good quality indeed. I like the new characters they bring in. I love when they mix with the older characters, the legacy characters, and I think they use those legacy characters in really poignant ways that moved me more than I was expecting it to. Number 3 is Scream 2. Yeah, so the direct sequel. It takes everything that was done in the first, but makes it bigger and not necessarily better, but more bloodier, more brutal. It does have a longer running time, and I feel that running time at times. It does away with one of my favourite characters in a really brutal fashion that at the time really shocked me. It was it really hit hard to see a particular character get killed. And yeah, it just holds up. As a sequel to a slasher movie, it holds up. The reveal at the end of the killers was... it could have been done better, I think. I think you get these characters who suddenly go to number 11, but aside from that, there's some great set pieces, and Sidney Prescott makes for my money, the best final girl that we've had in a slasher horror franchise. And number 4 is Scream 4. This is the film that I didn't like first time I saw it at the cinema. I just felt like it was kind of wash, rinse, repeat. It took me a long time to go back and watch it, and when I did, I was like, this is so much better than I remembered it being. I still think the final act suffers from over-monologuing and ridiculous kind of situation in which 3 characters which have survived 3 movies prior to this still get to survive at the end. It felt like it was dragging it out a little bit too much with regards to believability. And yeah, I did see the killer coming, or one of them at any rate. I saw one of the reveals coming a mile off, and that kind of diminished my enjoyment somewhat. But other than that, it is a really good sequel. It is a really good entry in the franchise that has a lot to say about modern culture and its use of internet and things like that. And it does what a really good Scream film does really well, which is comment on the culture in the time in which it was made. Number 5 for me is Scream 3, arguably considered the worst, I think, amongst most Scream fans. I think it's unfairly kind of dismissed. Is it of the quality of the first 2? No, not really. But it does take a few new kind of steps. I like the fact that it's just 1 killer in this one, not 2. I like the way it's tied to Billy Loomis. Like even in the new films, Billy Loomis is kind of held up as well, he was the original, but technically was being steered by the guy from this one. The only thing I would say is that the killer himself in this isn't that memorable from a performance aspect. I think Skeet Ulrich kind of brought something to Billy Loomis that the guy here doesn't quite bring. So he kind of feels like he's going through the screen motions by the time he's monologuing at the end. And yeah, the film feels a bit more disjointed. It's kind of all over the place. The settings changed. That didn't bother me at all. I liked the fact it went somewhere else, that we weren't stuck in Woodsboro anymore, that they went to LA, completely changed the scenery. And it's got some really nice kills, nice set pieces. Not a lot of people didn't like Parker Posey in this, but I actually quite like her. I thought she was funny. I warmed to her comedic shtick that she was doing around this time with the likes of Superman Returns and Blade Trinity. But yeah, it's a fun ride. It's not of the level of the first two films. It's definitely a drop. But as a Scream fan, there was a time when I could say this was the worst film in the franchise, and if this is the worst film in your franchise, then you're doing really well. Unfortunately, we can no longer say it's the worst film in the Scream franchise because we've just had the release of Scream 6. Yes, I wasn't too enamoured with this one, it's got to be said. I do like the two sisters that we get from Scream 5. I like their relationship. I like that there's scope there to take them places, particularly to the dark side with respects to one of them. I like some of the interplay between the core four. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen the film. But I feel like the film doesn't have the stomach to do away with characters that it should do away with, particularly at this point. I think too many characters in it suffer too much punishment to be able to survive from, which just stretches credibility beyond breaking point. I feel like there's predictability in regards to who the killer is, and again the monologuing at the end, just I'm out, I'm done. And I think characters throughout this film just make really stupid, dumbass choices with regards to how they operate, and yeah, the opportunities they miss for really beating the crap out of Ghostface while he's down. Yeah, it just, after the last film, after Scream 5, I thought this could really take the franchise somewhere fresh, somewhere new, and it doesn't. It just relies on old tropes. It's predictable, and it's just, yeah, Scream paint by numbers is how I would best describe it. But yeah, there you go. That's how I would rank the 6 Scream films. But how would you do it? Please let me know your ranking down in the comment section below. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.